directions for cross-cultural studies, linking organizational and societal cultures.
What does culture mean in cross-cultural studies? Much of the comparative management literature has adopted Bache and theoretical approaches to conceptualizing and measuring culture. It is no wonder that the literature has yielded little cumulative knowledge about management in different cultures. By Miller 1984, Kelly and Wortley 1981, Negandhi at 1983. While many explanations can be offered for the lack of consistency and clarity in comparative studies, one explanation is the nature of the societal culture and the degree to which individual organizational cultures reflect or conflict with the overarching societal culture. The degree of societal heterogeneity and the congruence or fit between societal and organizational cultures will be examined in this paper in an attempt to offer suggestions for future cross-cultural research. Societal cultures are likely to vary in the degree to which they have a dominant set of values and beliefs. One way of examining cultural diversity within any society is to identify the nations on a continuum ranging from homogeneous to heterogeneous. In a homogeneous societal culture, the underlying values and beliefs are shared and pervasive. Thus, a dominant set of cultural beliefs exists. In a more heterogeneous societal culture, many different values and beliefs are held by diverse population groups. This situation is characterized by a multicultural society. Observing that some societies may be monocultural while others are multicultural, it follows that organizational cultures within these societies will reflect the societal homogeneity and heterogeneity. In heterogeneous nations, organizational diversity will flourish. Nations that are industrialized, urban, open to immigration, and politically stable are more likely to be heterogeneous. Nations that are heterogeneous but politically unstable are excluded from the present investigation. Hence, the focus of this paper is on heterogeneous societies which hang together or successfully operate under the condition of cultural diversity. Examples of such nations would include the United States, Switzerland, and Belgium. Nations that are characterized by pervasive government ownership and control of business, reliance on rural or agrarian economies, or centrally planned economies are likely to be culturally homogeneous. In a more homogeneous societal culture, organizational cultural diversity will be constrained, and a much tighter fit will exist between social and organizational culture. The deviant organizations, those that dramatically differ from the societal culture, are likely to be ostracized or possibly forced to conform to the dominant values and beliefs. Examining societal homogeneity and heterogeneity is essential if attempts at cross-cultural comparisons are to prove useful. Reliance on abstract overgeneralization of a societal culture may lead to distortion in drawing conclusions regarding comparative management. For example, In the United States, attempt to capture the American culture by identifying a typical American firm would be useless. The United States has heterogeneous societal culture and, as a result, remarkably different organizational cultures. Heterogeneous societies are frequently compared with homogeneous ones, suggesting that the findings of many cross-national studies are meaningless in capturing a cultural component. In heterogeneous societal cultures, the organizational culture is more likely to predict and explain organizational functioning and behavior because it is more directly guides behavior. In contrast, the organizational culture in a homogeneous society is likely to reflect the societal culture. Therefore, congruence or fit between organizational and social culture is strong, and examining societal culture may prove to be as useful for explaining organizational life as considering the organizational culture. The organization is merely a passive carrier of the broader culture in a homogeneous society. Clearly, comparing organizations in heterogeneous and homogeneous societal cultures is problematic. As are studies comparing organizations in two heterogeneous societal cultures, alternate research approaches which address the degree of cultural diversity would be advised, concentrating on refining the definitions and conceptualizations of societal and organizational culture and measuring heterogeneity are important first steps. Directing research to comparisons among homogeneous societal cultures and organizational cultures within heterogeneous societies may also yield exciting comparative management opportunities. In this paper, the concepts of societal and organizational culture will be explored. The focus is on the informal real and the firm rather than on the component of the manufacturing process or technology, which may be cultural neutral and thus more readily transferred from one society to another. Using the distinction between homogeneous and heterogeneous societal cultures, several propositions will be suggested as precursors to research.
Social culture defined.
Societal culture defined. While many have been bemoaned the definitional complexity of the concept of culture, most researchers in cross-cultural studies have proceeded by ignoring the question of definition. One review noted that of the 22 studies examined, only 2 offered a definition of culture by Ajif Farouk and Baudouin on 1970. Reviews of the cross-cultural literature have explicitly criticized the tendency for researchers to assume that culture and nation-state are conceptually similar by Child 1981, Bagat and McQuaid 1982, Alder and 1983. These writers suggest that intellectual laziness and resistance to theoretical development are contributing factors to the lack of distinction drawn between culture and nation. Because culture is used in the comparative literature as either a synonym for nation or simply as a residual variable covering all those factors the other variables have not considered. Studies which conclude that culture makes a different and conflicting studies which indicate that organizational activities are culture-free cannot be reconciled. The early anthropological literature that focused on primitive societies used the term culture to refer to every aspects of a given society, much like the cross-cultural researchers today. Over the years, the term has acquired multiple definitions in use by scholars in numerous disciplines. As the previous article in this volume illustrates, by Nat at 1986, several sociologists, anthropologists, and organizational theorists have narrowed the definition and drawn distinction between the content of culture, shared understanding, and the product of culture, the artifacts or substance, by Enns 1985, Sat 1983, Tries and Bayer at 1984. Bagot and McQuaid at 1982 advocate the use of the term subjective culture, first suggested by Triandis and Associates in 1972 as an alternative to using culture as synonymous with nation. These authors introduced the term subjective culture to refer to the aspects of culture which relate to belief systems, roles, norms, and attitude as distinct from the language, climate, or environmental factors. By Child 1981 also provides an approach to culture which stresses the content of culture or value component. It preferences states in a society. The collective programming of the mind is the phrase used by Hofstede in 1984 to describe culture. What these authors offer is a view of culture that stresses shared ways of thinking or values. In addition, they attempt to separate environment from culture while acknowledging that a strong interaction exists between the two. Like Child and Hofstede, the approach to societal culture proposed here is one that concentrates on the cultural content or the set of shared values and the symbolic representations of shared meanings. By Geertz, 1973, a leading cultural anthropologist argues that societal culture denotes an historical transmitted pattern of meanings embodied in symbols, a system of inherited conceptions expressed in symbolic forms by means of which man communicate, perpetuate, and develop their knowledge about and attitudes toward life. The key factors in this orientation to culture include the shared nature of understandings that persist over time and are learned. Talcott Parson, in 1967, developed a general theory of social organization around the importance of cultural values. According to these sociologists, cultural values determine the shaping of social systems. Values are learned and provide the basis for defining and making sense of social structures. Parson and Clockhong observed that values have three components: the cognitive, the emotional, and the evaluative. Hence, the possession of values suggests that individuals think about what they believe in, have emotional attachment to these beliefs, and determine desirability from among a group of different beliefs. Attention to strictly cognitive aspects of management practice means one loses sight of culturally derived emotions and judgments. Through the process of social interaction, patterns of meaning are developed and passed on to others. While what makes a societal culture is the development of shared ideas or understandings that inform behavior in the context of the particular society. Thus, shared meanings are the understanding that lie behind and inform the everyday behaviors of a group of people. These hidden rules, preference states, and the unconscious codes are shared, taken for granted, and assumed to be given. Thus, they become universal for the whole of the society. Values are sustained over time but can also be changed. Therefore, culture cannot be viewed as static or permanent.
Homogeneous societal cultures and heterogeneous societal cultures.
A pleasant day to each and everyone. I'm Nurhana Amarani, a student of BTBTED FSM 2G. So my topic is all about homogeneous societal cultures. So, homogeneous societal cultures, many nations of the world are built with relatively homogeneous population. A homogeneous societal culture is one in which the shared meanings are similar and little variation in beliefs exists. That is, the culture has one dominant way of thinking and acting. Diversity exists in all nations, but the critical factor is degree of variation in the shared meanings within the society. For homogeneous societies, the degree of consensus is strong. In many societies, the strength of the dominant values is due in part to the presence of a power elite who have homogeneity of beliefs. In these countries, other groups within the society may hold different values, but they will confer on the elites the right to control institutions or will be helpless in changing the status quo. Thus, value sharing may not be universal, but the decision makers and leaders are unified and allowed to dominate. Over time, the dominant groups institutionalize their values, and the entire political and legal environment reflects these values. As an example, the white minority in South Africa controls both government and organizations and can subsequently force restrictions such as the apartheid policy. In this society, the dominant values and beliefs represented in the political, economic, and business context are those of a minority who currently control and shape organization functioning. So, in homogeneous nations, a more integrated set of beliefs guides behavior. Variation from the set of beliefs is regarded as deviant and not simply different. Some example of nations with cultural homogeneity may include Saudi Arabia, China, and Japan. Societies are infused with meanings which guide behavior. In addition, the meanings are symbolically represented in the economic and legal systems. These systems are enduring and thus have an impact on how business is done in particular nation. In the case of homogeneous societal culture, the legal and economic system will reflect the dominant way of thinking and will typically change slowly. So the next is heterogeneous societal cultures. A heterogeneous societal culture is one in which numerous population groups have specific and distinct values and understandings. In a heterogeneous society, many sets of shared meanings make up the society. These shared assumptions are common to some groups, but markedly different from the understanding of other groups. This characterization of a society suggests that multiple cultures coexist. A dominant societal culture exists in heterogeneous societies as well as homogeneous societies. The difference is that this dominant set of values is not regarded as the only acceptable set of beliefs, and thus much greater variation from this set of beliefs exists and encouraged within the heterogeneous society. Time magazine, in a recent special issue, highlighted the impact of heterogeneity by presenting articles on the new immigrants in the United States. This approach to diversity focused on ancestry as the basis for heterogeneity, as one article noted, Greenwald, 1985. What country is this? Many of most Americans might ask that question as they go about their work and play. Americans are increasingly finding that entire businesses have acquired a foreign-born labor. Another way of characterizing the presence of heterogeneity is suggested by Joel Garry, 1981, who argues that North America can be divided into 9 distinct cultures representing different regions. His book suggests that national boundaries are meaningless and that 9 different nations exist within North America. Mex-America, Breadbasket, Ecotopia, the Empty Quarter, Quebec, New England, the Foundry, Dixie, and the islands are the labels he attaches to these 9 different cultures. Several industrialized countries may fall under category of being relatively more heterogeneous in their culture than other countries. Example of heterogeneous societal cultures may include Canada and Australia, as well as those mentioned in the introduction of this chapter. Given the degree of the cultural diversity in heterogeneous nations, one would expect that the legal and political systems would reflect the diversity and comparatively greater and more frequent changes in institutions would exist. The importance placed on the word relative is critical both for development of the concept and future research. Comparative studies is an area where the degree of cultural consensus and variation from this normative set of reference is meaningful, if not critical, to research. That will be all for my topic. The next discussion is Miss Aleisa Gaganting Sardan. Thank you.
Homogeneous versus heterogeneous cultures.
Hi, good morning. My name is Aleisa Sardan from BTB FSM2G. My lesson is all about homogeneous and versus heterogeneous culture. Many cross-cultural researchers have acknowledged in this question portion of their manuscript that the particular organization they study is not typical or representative of the social culture. These observations reflect the possibility that a single societal culture does not exist in the country studied. The culture component it is the study may be the unity, organizational culture, or not beliefs of the organization's leadership. Enhance the cultural facets of many cross-cultural study may be more useful captured by examining the influence of the organizational culture on the behavior of work. Selecting an organization and identifying it as representative of the particular nation is a dangerous generalization of study of the heterogeneous society. The tendency in a comparative cross-cultural research to assume that a culture is homogeneous raises serious doubt as the replicability of many research findings. Thus, as important aspect of the cross-cultural research is diagnostic the degree to which the society is homogeneous or heterogeneous. One opportunity for future research could be develop important values or beliefs to use in position a nation on the county. The develop of the particular values organization could be particularly useful if the classification system stress values which directly have an effect of business-related issues. It is possible that even with homogeneous society culture, some members of the population will disagree on the cultural meanings and values. It is very unlike, however, that the degree of the diversity and difference on culture meanings could be more events and homogeneous.
The role of organizational culture.
Listen today to each everyone's. No, before we start our topics, we introduce myself. No, my name is Arvie Aranda. I'm BTVT Electronics Technology. So our discussion is about of the role of organizational culture. So what do you mean this of the role of organizational culture? So one of many different schools of thought and approaches to studying the organizations exist. Those is agreement that the organizations are distinct from the society. The environmental and the individual are the same, though we know that organizations are influenced and uninfluenced by the society. That means the role of organizational culture are the environment and the individual. So it is evident that organizations are the influenced by numerous internal and external factors, but it makes sense as any discussions of the comparative management to the specifically address the aspects of the management that are uniquely organizational as culture. One of the component of organizations is the informal system of shared meanings and values which are indigenous to the organizations. These aspects, while the organizational life is being called organizational culture, the numerous has been called the organizational culture exists but must corresponds with the definition used by Chain of in 1985. So, signifies organizational culture as the deeper level of basic assumptions and beliefs that are to share by numbers of an organizations that are shared by members of the organized and normal of operate of an unique conscious and that define in basic and of guiding fashions organizations and view itself its environment. So furthermore, we know that the role of organizational culture that has these definitions are suggest at the concept or organization versus social culture differs with respect to the level of culture analysis and content of culture itself. Based on this idea that in researchers organizational is researchers have redirected attentions away from the instructional aspects of organizations and more toward the informal. So implicit share the meanings of Ochi and the weekends in 1955. According to the Ochi and Wilkins, the polarity of books such as Factors and The Waterman's and in Search. Excellent and Deal of Kennedy of corporate cultures implicify the recognition that are the rational and authenticate to explain all what happens of organizations. So both of American business community and academic are how they acknowledge the importance of use assumptions of meanings of determines behavior and possibly success in an organization. As a student, that organizational do not operate in the vacuum but rather in a central context. The level of homogeneous and heterogeneous societal culture are the use of designated of the degree which a diversity of values and beliefs provide a society. Because of the interplay of society of organizational culture, close of attentions must be paid to the link between of different forms of culture when the cultural diversity exists in a society. It also that logical that cultural diversity will also exist across of organizations. In society, wherein strongly that health set the values of preferred of organizations will be informed with these meanings and will not differ as much from each other. So the lastly for the organizational rule are in addition to overlashing of society culture across culture researcher must be take the considerations that cultural organizational cultures and heterogeneous societies the role of organizational culture. So become a critical. So the role of culture is a particularly important, no, when an organizational beliefs conflict with those of society. The remainders are society. These sections avoided and applications of the leakage of organizational functioning. So that's all about of the role of organizational culture. So that's are the heterogeneous and the homogeneous culture. Bye.
Organizational culture in homogeneous societies.
Hello everyone, I am Angelie Andico from Activited FSM 2G. So my topic is all about the organizational culture in homogeneous societies and heterogeneous societies. In heterogeneous societal cultures, the organizational culture is more likely to predict and explain organizational functioning and behavior because it more directly guides behavior. In contrast, the organizational culture in a homogeneous society is likely to reflect the societal culture. What is a homogeneous culture? Abstract. A homogeneous society is one in which all its individuals share both the same racial ethnicity, the same language, and a series of beliefs. It is a society where its members share culture, customs, and way of thinking. What is heterogeneous culture? Examples. Definition. Cultural heterogeneity refers to differences in culture identity related to, for instance, class, ethnicity, language, traditions, religion, sense of place, and many other cultural aspects. In a homogeneous societal culture, the underlying values and beliefs are shared and pervasive. Thus, a dominant set of cultural beliefs exists. In a more heterogeneous societal culture, many different values and beliefs are held by diverse population groups. This situation is characterized by a multicultural society.
Key cultural types.
Hi everyone, my name is Francisco Ronmark from BTV FSM 2G student and one of the member of Group 1. So today I will be going to discuss about linking cultural types. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's start. Both societal and organizational culture are characterized by the degree of homogeneity or heterogeneity that exists. It is possible to conceive of several cultural combinations to characterize different situations. Like for example, if a society and different organizations are homogeneous, little variation in beliefs and values exist. Organizations are closely allied with the overarching societal culture and balance or fit is evident. The implication for the organizational behavior in this situation is that both the society and the organizational impose values. These values are complementary and both directly influence individuals at work. The society plays an active role in the shaping of behavior while the organization plays a passive role. Management within organizations in homogeneous societies performs a minor maintenance activity. Hence, it is likely that one of the net result of homogeneous societal cultures is inability of an organization to be different, and thus the possibility that creativity and innovations are stay-filled. So next, assume that the society is heterogeneous and the organization is homogeneous with respect to belief systems. In this case, the organization's culture will dominate individual actions. When many diverse and conflicting values and beliefs exist in a society, the worker will look to the clearly articulate and consistent values within the organization for guidance and direction. The greater the societal diversity, the more active and important the role of corporate culture in the life of the employee. The opportunities for management to make a difference in the work behaviors of employees are much greater in heterogeneous societies. So, in the United States, recent attention has been focused on how to change corporate culture in order to elicit desired behavior from employees. Many practitioners believe that a corporate culture can be changed and that the results can be positive for organizational performance. By Denison, 1983, Hickman and Silva, 1984, Killman, 1982, and Davis, 1981. Increased attention has been directed toward developing and maintaining homogeneous organizational culture. The normative message is simple. In a heterogeneous society, organizational cultures can and must become homogeneous to maximize the success of the enterprise. Prescriptions are frequently offered specifying the nature or substances of the corporate culture in addition to the need for homogeneity. By Killman, 1984, discusses adaptive organizational cultures as being innovative, creative, risk-taking, and driving, in contrast to bureaucratic cultures that are cautious, power-oriented, regulated, and ordered. The focus on developing a specific type of homogeneous organizational cultures dominates much of what is currently written on the management and corporate strategy. Having raised question of the cultural heterogeneity and the valuable role of the organizational culture in many societies, it is now essential to provide some possible suggestion for future research. In the next section, several avenues for future research will be discussed. That's all. Thank you.
New directions for cross-cultural research.
Good day to each and everyone. My name is Reean Sangalang from BTBTED FSM2G. My topic is all about new direction for cultural research. What is cross-cultural communication? Cross-cultural communication is a field of study that looks at how people from differing cultural backgrounds communicate in similar and different ways among themselves, and how they endeavor to communicate across cultures. Intercultural communication is a related field of study. What new or additional ideas that you learn about cross-cultural communication? Maintain etiquette. Many cultures have specific etiquette around the way they communicate. Before you meet, research the target culture, or if time allows, do some cross-cultural training. For example, many cultures expect a degree of formality at the beginning of communication between individuals. Every culture has its own specific way to indicating this formality. Her and fro in Germany, reversing family and given names in China, and the use of san in Japan for men and women, etc. Be aware of this familiarity tokens and don't jump straight to first name terms until you receive a cue from the other person to do so. What is the essence of cross-cultural communication? Understanding cross-cultural communication is important for any company that has a diverse workforce or plans on conducting global business. This type of communication involves an understanding of how people from different cultures speak, communicate, and perceive the world around them.